You can have the most expensive bait and rigs in the world, but if you aren't fishing where the fish actually are, you won't get a single bite. This is exactly how to read a lake or river to find feeding carp, and it's the single most important skill you will ever develop as an angler. Welcome to Monster Carp Fishing. Today we're breaking down the art of watercraft, the ability to look at a body of water and know where the carp are hiding, feeding, and moving. This isn't guesswork, this is pattern recognition, and once you learn it, your catch rate will transform. Let's start with a simple truth. As Korda team angler Tom Dove puts it, if you're not on the fish, then you can't catch them. End of story. Even without a hook, I could eventually muster up a way of catching a carp, maybe a lasso or a net, but without carp present, I'd struggle. That's the foundation of everything we're about to cover. Location beats everything. It beats your bait, it beats your rig, it beats your fancy bivvy and your 1,000-pound rod setup. Find the fish first. Everything else comes second. So how do you actually find them? Carp are driven by two things: comfort and food. They rarely sit still. They're constantly moving in search of both, and their location shifts with the seasons, the weather, and even the time of day. But here's the good news. Carp give themselves away far more often than most anglers realize. You just need to know what to look for. Let's talk about the 10 visual signs that carp are present in your water. The most obvious is fish showing on the surface, jumping, rolling, crashing clear of the water. Nobody's entirely sure why they do this, whether it's to clear parasites, adjust their swim bladders, or just for fun. But a carp that jumps high and crashes back down is telling you exactly where it is. That said, a jumping fish isn't necessarily a feeding fish. What you really want to see is head and shouldering. This happens when a carp partially exits the water before gently rolling back in. It's quieter, subtler, and it's almost always connected to feeding fish. These are harder to spot because they're often silent. You'll only catch them if you're actually watching. Then there's bubbling, also called fizzing. Tiny pinprick bubbles rising steadily through the surface usually mean carp have their heads buried in silt, rooting around for bloodworm and other natural food. A patch of fizzing that keeps reappearing in the same spot is gold dust. That's an active feeding zone. Dawn is the best time to spot it. Colored water is another massive indicator that most anglers walk right past. If you see a patch of water that looks darker or murkier than the area around it, especially on clay-bottomed lakes, carp have been tearing up the lake bed while feeding. If the water's cloudy, a bite is almost certainly on the cards. Look for flat spots on a rippled surface. Carp release natural oils as they feed and move, and these oils create small calm patches on the water that stand out against the surrounding ripple. Subtle but unmistakable once you know what you're seeing. Moving vegetation is another dead giveaway. If reeds are twitching, lily pads are bobbing, or marginal plants are swaying with no wind to explain it, carp are brushing through. Pay attention to the margins. Many big fish are caught within a rod length of the bank. And don't ignore the birds. Coots will panic and backpedal if they encounter a big carp near them. Mallards spook when they bump into fish near the surface. Even swans with young cygnets will react aggressively to large carp swimming nearby. The wildlife constantly tells you where the fish are if you're paying attention. Now let's talk about where to focus your search. On lakes, start with the margins: overhanging trees, reed beds, undercut banks, quiet corners. Carp love edges. Next, find the weed. One experienced angler put it simply: wherever the weed is thickest is where the carp will be, and that's the only locational rule that applies to every water he's ever fished. Gravel bars are natural food highways. Fish the front of a bar or down the back into silt where bait accumulates, and island margins, particularly the sheltered side away from the wind, create calm feeding zones where natural food gathers. On rivers, the game changes. You're looking for eddies and backwaters behind bridge pilings and fallen trees. Deep pools where carp retreat during the day. Undercut banks carved by the current. We're pools with pockets of slack water. River carp were once considered almost mythical, but the reality is there probably isn't a river drain or canal in England that doesn't hold at least a few, and some hold fish that rival anything you'll find in a lake. Now here's where Monster Carp Fishing wants to give you a real edge: weather. The ideal conditions for finding active, feeding carp are moderate warmth, low air pressure, a south or southwest wind, and overcast skies. There's an old rhyme that captures it perfectly: when the wind is in the west, the fishing is at its best. A warm southwesterly wind pushes surface water across the lake, creating an undertow that draws carp naturally toward the windward bank. The research backs this up. Carp feeding activity peaks when water temperatures sit between 12 and 18 degrees Celsius and air pressure drops below 10-20 millibars. Terry Hearn, one of the greatest carp anglers in history, used to study weather reports 2 weeks into the future, looking for drops in air pressure and new wind directions to plan his sessions around. His legendary capture of the parrot from Wazzing came during Storm Doris in 2017. That's not coincidence. That's watercraft at its finest. Time of day matters enormously to carp. Crepuscular, meaning they're most active at dawn and dusk. Scientific research has confirmed two main feeding peaks, 8 to 11 in the morning and 7 to 11 at night, accounting for up to a third of their daily food intake in each window. For most waters, the first 3 hours of daylight is the single best feeding window of the entire day. So here's your practical approach, step by step. Before you even arrive, search for your venue online. Use Google Maps satellite imagery to identify deeper and shallower areas, spot gravel bars, and plan your approach. When you get to the water, walk the entire perimeter before you set up. Do it twice if the lake isn't too large. Look for every sign we've discussed. As the team at DNA Baits puts it, the anglers who catch consistently are usually the ones who follow the fish, not the ones who wait for them. Invest in a quality pair of polarized sunglasses. Amber or brown lenses cut through surface glare and let you see fish, clear spots, and underwater features that are invisible to the naked eye. This single piece of equipment will do more for your fishing than any new rod or reel. And finally, trust your instincts over time. Reading. Water becomes second nature. If something tells you fish are there, it's usually worth listening. That's watercraft. That's how you find carp. And that's why here at Monster Carp Fishing, we'll always tell you the same thing. An hour spent feeding fish is worth more than 10 hours fishing in the wrong spot. If this helped you, subscribe for more breakdowns on carp fishing strategy, and we'll see you on the bank.